The Ilyushin Il-2 Sturmovik is not just an aircraft, it is a symbol of survival, brutality, and industrial warfare. Designed before World War II, the IL-2 became the most produced military aircraft in history with over 36,000 units built. The Soviet Union needed a flying weapon that could survive ground fire while delivering devastating strikes against enemy armor, infantry, and supply lines, and the IL-2 was the answer. What made the IL-2 unique was its armored shell. Unlike traditional aircraft where armor was added later, the IL-2's armor was part of the structure itself. The cockpit, engine, fuel tanks, and oil coolers were encased in steel, earning it the nickname Flying Tank. This allowed pilots to fly low over battlefields, absorbing machine gun and small caliber fire while continuing the attack. Initially, the IL-2 was a single-seat aircraft, but this proved dangerous. Enemy fighters could attack from behind without resistance. Later variants introduced a rear gunner, dramatically improving survivability. Armed with cannons, rockets, and bombs, the IL-2 became a nightmare for German ground forces on the Eastern Front. By the end of the war, the IL-2 had become a psychological weapon. Its unmistakable sound signaled destruction. Even today, the IL-2 stands as one of the most influential combat aircraft ever created. The IL-10 was the evolution of the legendary IL-2, created toward the end of World War II. While the IL-2 proved devastating, combat experience revealed weaknesses: limited speed, heavy handling, and vulnerability to modern fighters. The IL-10 was designed to solve those problems. Powered by a stronger engine and featuring improved aerodynamics, the IL-10 was faster, more maneuverable, and better protected. Armor protection was refined rather than simply increased, making the aircraft more balanced. Its weapon suite was upgraded to deliver heavier strikes with greater accuracy. Although arriving late in World War II, the IL-10 saw extensive post-war service. It became a key aircraft in early Cold War conflicts and was widely exported to Soviet allies. In Korea, IL-10s performed ground attack missions under intense conditions, proving that piston-engine aircraft still had a role even in the jet age. The IL-10 represented the final peak of armored prop-driven attack aircraft, a bridge between World War II tactics and modern air-to-ground warfare. Originally known as the DB-3, the IL-4 was one of the Soviet Union's most important long-range bombers of World War II. It combined endurance, payload capacity, and reliability, qualities desperately needed during the early years of the war. The IL-4 played a historic role in the first bombing raids against Berlin in 1941. Flying long distances at night, often without fighter escort, these missions demonstrated Soviet resolve at a time when morale was critical. Despite limited defensive armament and modest speed, the IL-4 proved adaptable. It served as a bomber, torpedo bomber, reconnaissance aircraft, and even a transport. Naval versions hunted enemy ships across frozen seas and stormy coastlines. The IL-4 may not have been flashy, but it was dependable, and in total war, dependability saves nations. Originally known as the DB-3, the IL-4 was one of the Soviet Union's most important long-range bombers of World War II. It combined endurance, payload capacity, and reliability, qualities desperately needed during the early years of the war. The IL-4 played a historic role in the first bombing raids against Berlin in 1941. Flying long distances at night, often without fighter escort, these missions demonstrated Soviet resolve at a time when morale was critical. Despite limited defensive armament and modest speed, the IL-4 proved adaptable. It served as a bomber, torpedo bomber, reconnaissance aircraft, and even a transport. Naval versions hunted enemy ships across frozen seas and stormy coastlines. The IL-4 may not have been flashy, but it was dependable, and in total war, dependability saves nations. The Ilyushin Il-14 was born from lessons learned with the IL-12. While the IL-12 proved reliable, early accidents and operational challenges made it clear that improvements were needed. The IL-14 was not a radical redesign, but a carefully refined aircraft built for safety, stability, and long-term service. Introduced in the early 1950s, the IL-14 featured stronger wings, improved engines, and better handling characteristics. These upgrades allowed it to operate in harsh climates, icy Siberian runways, mountainous regions, and underdeveloped airfields where Western airliners simply could not function. One of the IL-14's greatest strengths was reliability. It became the backbone of Aeroflot's regional network and was widely exported to Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, and even some Western-aligned nations. Military variants served as troop transports, VIP aircraft, weather reconnaissance platforms, and training aircraft. The IL-14 also played a role in polar exploration. Specially modified versions supported Arctic and Antarctic missions, landing on ice runways and operating in extreme cold. This made the aircraft vital not only for transportation but also for scientific research. By the time it was retired, the IL-14 had proven that Soviet civil aviation could be safe, dependable, and globally competitive. It stands today as one of the most successful piston engine transports ever produced by Ilyushin. The Ilyushin IL-18 marked the Soviet Union's entry into the modern turboprop age. First flying in the late 1950s, it was designed to rival Western airliners while maintaining Soviet priorities, durability, range, and versatility. Unlike earlier piston-powered transports, the IL-18 used turboprop engines, offering better fuel efficiency and longer range. This allowed Aeroflot to connect distant cities across the Soviet Union and beyond, including international routes to Europe, Asia, and Africa. The IL-18's airframe proved extraordinarily adaptable. Beyond civilian passenger service, it was transformed into military transports, electronic intelligence platforms, command aircraft, and maritime patrol variants. This flexibility extended the aircraft's lifespan far beyond its original purpose. One of the most notable derivatives was the IL-20 and IL-22 series, used for reconnaissance and airborne command roles. The IL-18 platform was so reliable that some variants remained in service well into the 21st century. From government leaders to scientists and soldiers, the IL-18 carried generations of people across vast distances. It became a symbol of Soviet aviation maturity and engineering confidence during the Cold War. The Ilyushin Il-28 was the Soviet Union's first successful jet bomber, representing a dramatic leap into the jet age. Introduced in the late 1940s, it replaced piston engine bombers almost overnight and redefined Soviet tactical aviation, powered by turbojet engines derived from German wartime research. The IL-28 combined speed, altitude, and payload in a compact design. Its performance shocked Western intelligence agencies when it appeared at airshows, demonstrating that the USSR had fully entered the jet era. The IL-28 was designed for simplicity and mass production. It required minimal maintenance and could operate from relatively basic airfields. This made it ideal for widespread deployment across Warsaw Pact nations and allied states. Variants of the IL-28 served as bombers, reconnaissance aircraft, electronic warfare platforms, trainers, and even nuclear delivery systems. It saw combat service in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, where it proved robust and intimidating. Though eventually replaced by more advanced aircraft, the IL-28 laid the foundation for future Soviet jet bombers. It was not just a weapon, it was a statement of technological arrival. The Ilyushin IL-38 was born out of Cold War necessity. As NATO submarine fleets expanded across the world's oceans, the Soviet Union needed a dedicated long-range maritime patrol aircraft capable of detecting, tracking, and deterring underwater threats. The answer came from an unexpected place: the civilian IL-18 airliner. By adapting the proven IL-18 airframe, Ilyushin engineers created an aircraft optimized for endurance rather than speed. The IL-38 could remain airborne for long periods, scanning vast ocean areas using radar, magnetic anomaly detectors, and acoustic sensors. This made it a critical component of Soviet naval strategy. The IL-38's internal weapons bay carried depth charges, torpedoes, and naval mines. Its mission was not dramatic dogfighting but patient surveillance, quietly guarding maritime borders and strategic sea lanes. Crews trained extensively to coordinate with surface ships and submarines, turning the IL-38 into an airborne extension of the Soviet Navy. Over time, upgraded variants introduced modern electronics and digital systems, allowing the aircraft to remain relevant decades after its introduction. Some IL-38s continue to fly today, proving the strength of the original design. The IL-38 represents the Cold War's unseen battle, where endurance, detection, and information mattered more than raw firepower. The Ilyushin Il-62 was the Soviet Union's first true long-range jet airliner, designed to compete directly with Western aircraft like the Boeing 707. When it entered service in the 1960s, it transformed Soviet international aviation. With 4 rear-mounted jet engines and a distinctive T-tail, the IL-62 was engineered for stability and long-distance travel. It allowed Aeroflot to operate non-stop routes between Moscow and distant capitals across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Beyond civilian service, the IL-62 became a symbol of state power. Government and military variants were used to transport leaders, diplomats, and strategic personnel. Its presence at foreign airports was as much political as it was practical. While not as fuel-efficient as later designs, the IL-62 was admired for its robustness and ability to operate from runways with limited infrastructure. This made it ideal for global operations during the Cold War. For decades, the IL-62 carried millions of passengers and shaped the image of Soviet aviation abroad. It marked the USSR's arrival as a long-haul aviation power. The Ilyushin Il-76 is one of the most iconic heavy transport aircraft ever built. Designed during the height of the Cold War, it was created to move troops, vehicles, and supplies across vast distances quickly and reliably. What set the IL-76 apart was its ability to operate from rough, unpaved runways. Powerful engines, a reinforced landing gear, and high-mounted wings allowed it to land where few large aircraft could. This made it invaluable for military logistics and humanitarian missions alike. The IL-76 could carry tanks, armored vehicles, helicopters, and hundreds of troops. It also supported airborne operations, dropping paratroopers and heavy equipment into combat zones. Over time, the airframe was adapted for firefighting, aerial refueling, early warning radar, and disaster relief. From war zones to earthquake response missions, the IL-76 became a global workhorse, operated by dozens of countries. It remains active today in both military and civilian roles. Few aircraft in history have combined strength, versatility, and longevity like the IL-76. It is not just a transport, it is a backbone of modern airlift capability.